Let me get this all set up. The view. There we go. Okay, this is all super informal, so just chatting it up.
Okay.
Okay, great. So right now the Chiefs are currently a 1.5 point favorite over the Eagles, just of course one win away from a possible three-peat. How possible is this?
It's very possible when you have the best coach in the NFL, and Andy Reid, currently, maybe one of the best coaches of all time in terms of NFL history in Andy Reid. You have continuity on the coaching staff, right? I mean, all three coordinators have been together for years now, offense, defense, special teams. You have a quarterback who's been there for 8 seasons now, who is who was handpicked by this GM and Brett Veach, who's known this head coach forever, going back to the days when we were all together in Philadelphia. The offensive line is finally kind of settled down. The wide receivers are starting to play better, as you saw against Buffalo. Xavier Worthy had his breakout game. Hollywood Brown is healthy. Travis Kelce looks like playoff Travis. Steve Spagnuolo is one of the best defensive coordinators, big game defensive coordinators that we've ever seen. Chris Jones is one of the best defensive lineman in the game and probably in NFL history in terms of how he plays on the interior. Him and Aaron Donald set the standard recently as far as play at that position. That's a lot right there. That's a lot of reasons why, for the Chiefs, they're knocking on the door of history. And quite honestly, I think they're a team of destiny. And I think it happens in dramatic fashion with them, like it usually does.
I want to touch base on Travis Kelce because I was looking back some of your old interviews where you were impressed with his playoff performance as well. He hasn't looked like old Travis, but in this past postseason, he has, right? So to that point, you talked about him, I guess, essentially coming alive in the nighttime, right? You've been placed with it. You've been impressed with his zone coverage, getting off the ball, just being
Mhm.
able to move him in different spots as well, and getting that free access at the line of scrimmage as well. So can you just kind of talk about him in that regard?
Yeah, he's one of those guys that if you don't make a concerted effort to go ahead and neutralize him at the line of scrimmage when he's on the line of scrimmage in particular and slow down his progress getting up the field, then you're asking for trouble. You're asking for exactly what he's going to give you, which is probably a big fat L on the scoreboard. And whoever is in closest proximity to him, he's just going to box you out like a basketball player in zone coverage in particular, and he's just going to rack up yardage and be a chain mover, down the field until he gets in the red zone. Then he's just going to wind up finding that uncovered spot, and Patrick's going to find him. He's going to run around and find him. He's going to score touchdowns. That's what Travis is at this point in his career. He's never been the dynamic athlete. What he is, though, is a dynamic, instinctive football player that's also playing with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and those two kind of like share one brain. So they see it all the same. What Andy does a great job of, Andy Reid, is moving him around so you can never get a beat on him. You can never feel comfortable about where he's coming from and what he's going to do, because especially in the first 10 to 15 scripted plays of their game plan, they'll have him in 6, 7 different spots. And they'll try and get him the ball in those from those 6, 7 different spots to where the coordinator has to then really figure out, okay, well, what is the game plan for him this week? What are they trying to do with him? And has it really screwed up what we kind of put into place to slow him down? And see, so Travis is really like he's in the perfect spot, right? He's got a great quarterback, a great head coach who knows what his strengths and weaknesses are and how to use them. And then he himself, he just comes alive in these big games. He understands what's at stake. Not that the regular season isn't important, but these guys have won so much. You know how that goes with high performance athletes. They live for the big moments. And sometimes it almost looks like they get bored. They're not really bored, but they're kind of like they're so damn confident and they understand so much about how to win that sometimes it's just like, yeah, let's just get to when it really matters. And now that it really matters, he'll be at his very best. And what's cool is that they get to play in the Mercedes Benz. I mean, what it's called the Mercedes Benz. Yeah,
He's a super now. Yep.
yeah, Mercedes Superdome. It's just, and I played there a couple of times myself, and there's something very iconic and very emotional about playing in that building in big games. It's just a cool place, and I think it's just the perfect setting for them to try and chase history. And in my view, I think they're going to achieve it.
You talk about Travis making those big plays and those big moments, but then you also mentioned a little earlier Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, new guys, right? How
Mhm.
have they and maybe just some other players been able to step up?
Yeah, I think, well, one, in the case of Hollywood, he's healthy now. He got hurt early, and he was someone who was really supposed to be the quote unquote Tyreek Hill light, the guy who could really be the third level guy, the big down the field guy. And then they missed that, right? It's because he's hurt. Then they had to try and get Xavier Worthy up to speed as quickly as possible. So maybe he could be that guy in addition to being like McCole Hardman was, which is the jet sweep guy, the reverse guy, the trick play guy. So that took time. Now that they're all together, you see how Patrick quickly tried to get Hollywood Brown a bunch of touches in that Buffalo game. Xavier's been playing all year long. His confidence is just growing and growing, and Patrick's working with him and working with him to the point where now, just like happened 3 years ago, 2 years ago, when they beat Philadelphia in the Super Bowl down in Glendale in Arizona, young guys now, new guys are starting. Those are new guys, right? I mean, Xavier's a rookie, and Hollywood's the first year that he's played here. These guys kind of become like grizzled vets underneath the Kansas City umbrella, and they just kind of take on the attitude and the culture, and they just kind of adopt the culture that's already been established by Patrick and Andy and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, and see that's how like those guys they benefit from a place that is already so damn established and like a well-oiled machine that you're able to get that kind of production out of two new guys, one a veteran, one a rookie, in a way that maybe a lot of teams wouldn't be able to get that production because they don't have that same culture. They don't have that same setup. They don't have Patrick Mahomes telling you exactly what to do, exactly what he expects. And you don't want to let the guy down because he is the best quarterback in the league. He is the guy who, when it's all said and done, may be considered to be the greatest quarterback of all time. That's real powerful stuff. And that allows that that impact, well, I guess you should say that motivates players to play above and beyond maybe what you would expect them to play in that certain situation. And see that's the cool thing. That's how fortunate Brett Veach, the general manager, and Andy Reid are to have that kind of thing in place that they created. It wasn't by luck, they created it, they built the team. But it just makes everything else so much easier when you're talking about bringing new people into your umbrella, under your umbrella, and into your organization. It just makes it so much easier. That's how they're able to sustain success. As long as Andy and Patrick are there, in particular, they will always be in the fight, no matter what.
Well, let's flip sidelines in terms of like new people. Saquon Barkley, right? He's been
Mhm.
absolutely phenomenal for that Eagles offense. And I know that you say like they shouldn't worry too much about necessarily establishing the pass game as long as Saquon is able to get loose, get about 60 yards on the ground as well. This is the run game for them. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I guess when I said that I was kind of like pushing back on the belief that Philadelphia couldn't be a Super Bowl contender or Super Bowl winner without the explosive component on the outside with the wide receivers. Because that's the easiest way to get chunk plays. That's the easiest way to break the game open is to throw it down the field, in particular on the perimeter. Well, Jalen, for one reason or another, hasn't been able to do that this year the way maybe he did it 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And, it's well documented how people feel in Philadelphia and how AJ Brown has felt at different points in time as far as his, kind of disappearing from the limelight and disappearing from being the focal point in the passing game. Well, the reason why he has is because when they get Saquon Barkley and they get him behind that offensive line, and you have a running back now that is producing plus 20, 30, 40, 60-yard runs all the time, why would you go away from that? Why would you stop doing that? Because it serves a bunch of purposes. One, it eats up the clock. Two, it wears the defense out. Three, it makes it easier for when you then do play action and throw it a little bit. Now, Jalen has to take advantage of those opportunities because he doesn't have the same number now because the offense runs through Saquon. But what I was saying was, who cares where the explosive plays are coming from, as long as you're getting them. Now, if Kansas City's able to slow that down, which no one has been able to slow down this offense all year running the ball, nobody. If Kansas City can, then maybe Philadelphia has a problem. But if they can't, I would keep riding that formula. Obviously, you want the quarterback to play better. You want it to be a balanced attack. And AJ Brown's one of the best in the league, and so is Devontae Smith. So is Dallas Goedert, their tight end. But I'm saying, like, let's not say they can't win that way because they've already won that way. They've won that way all the way up to the Super Bowl. Saquon's right in the thick of things for the MVP for a reason. That big offensive line and his otherworldly talent. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Well, in terms of the last matchup, this was a back and forth matchup, and they didn't have Saquon at that time, their winning formula. What
Mhm.
needs to change this year for
Uh,
the
Defensively, they have to. Philadelphia has to make stops. Philadelphia has to win the line of scrimmage defensively, and they have to make Patrick do something that Patrick very rarely does, which is not be able to deliver in big moments. Whether it be probably first and foremost with his legs, especially in the postseason, because that's where Patrick kills people in the postseason. He then makes it a point to make sure that if it's not there, I will run it. If you're going to take away the deep shots, I will take off and get 10, 15, 20 on you. And heck, they may even call quarterback design run down the goal line and make me look like Lamar Jackson, which is exactly what they did against Buffalo. So Philly has to make sure that Patrick does not get going like he did on them the first time around. The way he scrambled on that bum ankle on that bad field down in Arizona and just cut them up. And then they made some critical errors in the secondary. Down in the red zone, they had no game plan for the passing attack that Kansas City had. So there's one, taking care of the quarterback, and then there's two, they got to be more prepared, especially in the red zone, which they weren't last time.
absolutely, and that's what I was going to say. He was able to do that at the end of that Buffalo game that essentially sealed the win for them. I want
Mm-hmm.
to flip the script right quick, talking about Kellen Moore to the Saints. Of course,
Yeah.
the big talk of the town down here. Is that an attract? Is the Saints organization an attractive spot for Kellen Moore?
Well, look, I think for first time head coaches, I think look, unless you feel as though you have multiple options, every place is attractive if that's ultimately what your goal is, which is to lead a franchise. There are challenges aplenty for Kellen Moore as far as taking the Saints job, just like there would be for anyone. Um, they are going to have to make sure that they infuse a lot of youth into that roster via the draft. Kellen's got to make sure he builds a tremendous coaching staff, a tremendous support staff as far as his own competency, calling plays and being a leader and kind of being prepared for this moment. Do you ever really know if you're prepared for this moment until you have it? He has been around some great coaches. He has coordinated some great offenses. He has helped develop some great players. Those are all things that check boxes for team presidents and owners as far as when they're looking for a head coach. The obstacles are obvious as to what needs to be done down in New Orleans. Do I think that Kellen can be the person who ultimately winds up doing it? It won't be just on him. Obviously Mickey Loomis is going to have to help him out. They're going to have a great plan for salary cap management and have a great plan as far as coming up with a draft strategy to take care of all those critical positions, namely when you're talking about quarterback. So we'll see. But yeah, I like Kellen a lot. I've talked to him a couple different times, and I think he's shown you this year in Philadelphia, just like he showed you when he was in Dallas, when he was with Dak. But Kellen knows how to play to players' strengths and get a team moving in the right direction quickly.
In terms of playing to a team strength or a player strength, though, I guess is 1A of that question. Should he stick with Philadelphia as like Joe Brady pulled his name out of their running, or is it time for him to look for that position for the head
Yeah,
coach?
that's a great question. And you know what? Again, if you really like where you are and you're winning, and that's a really good question because there's probably a few guys who are in that same position. Really, I can think of three when you're talking about Kellen, Joe Brady, and then Cliff Kingsbury. They're all really in the same kind of situation. Um, they all are in situations where the organization is strong. They're winning a lot of games. They have great continuity. They have an answer at the quarterback position. Sometimes, and you know what? And coordinators are making a lot of money now, and for a lot less headaches than what comes with being the head coach. So is that a possibility? I guess it's a possibility, but Kellen seems a lot further down the road right now as far as taking this job than Joe Brady ever got, or don't know who else they interviewed. I can't remember off the top of my head. But look, Kellen may be thinking right now, look, I've done what I need to do as far as being a coordinator. I want to take on the challenge. There's only 32 of them. You don't know how many times this opportunity comes around again, regardless of how tough it looks like the situation may be. I'm going to take my shot at it, and you could not blame him. You could not blame him at all.
Some of the favorites they talked to, Aaron Glenn, Mike
Yeah,
Kafka, Mike McCarthy was they didn't necessarily interview him fully, but that was a talking point rather. Should the
yeah.
Saints, as they sit back and watch this all unfold here, right? Should they be all in on Moore?
Um, they should be if they feel as though he's a credible and trustworthy candidate that he can positively impact their football team the way in which he's impacted again the players that have been in Philadelphia, the players that have been in Dallas. I mean, it's such a subjective thing. It's hard to say like sitting here right now based upon what they asked him to say, well, should the Saints be all in or not? Based on what I know, I don't have any reason to believe that they shouldn't be all in. I don't have any reason to doubt Kellen and his ability to be a leader, that which is required to be a head coach in the NFL. I don't have any reason to doubt him. What he has to ask though, see, this is a situation where he needs to ask them as many questions as they're asking him, which is, what are you going to do to help me? What are you going to do to help me help this football team? What's the structure going to be like? What's the salary cap plan? What's the draft plan? What's the team building plan? What are the resources I'm going to have at my disposal? How do you guys go about doing business here as far as acquiring players? Like there's a lot that he has to know too, in order for he himself to be all in, let alone them be all. It sounds like they're already way down the road with him right now. It's just going to be up to him. So hopefully it all works out for both of them. Because Kellen, every head coach that gets a job like this, they deserve the opportunity to succeed. And not every time are they put in a position to succeed. They just aren't. And we know what the reasons are, from organization to organization, how sometimes that can get sideways. Hopefully it doesn't for him. There's too many stories like that. You need more good, positive ones. Like, for instance, what had happened with Dan Quinn in Washington and why Cliff Kingsbury's in no hurry to leave now, because it's a great situation.
Well, we definitely expect those conversations to ramp back up immediately after the game.
Yeah,
Louis, appreciate you joining me again.
of course. Thank you.
Okay, I'm done recording.